most of the money that is spent on quote unquote autism doesn't benefit autistic people. It benefits people who are like around autistic people.
If your kindergarten isn't fully inclusive, you shouldn't have a kindergarten. Like there's something wrong with your kindergarten if you can't include every 5-year-old. There's something terribly wrong with your kindergarten setup.
But imagine if everybody had attended a school that was inclusive, where disabled kids and able kids were learning together and learning from each other. Imagine how much better of a people we would be, like just generally and culturally.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to Think Inclusive, real conversations about building schools where every learner belongs. I'm your host, Tim Villegas. Today's episode is about what happens when two people from very different backgrounds come together to challenge the dominant narratives around autism and disability, and decide to write a book about it. Our guests are Meghan Ashburn and Jules Edwards, co-authors of I Will Die on This Hill. We talk about how their relationship started with tension and grew into collaboration. The colonial capitalist lens of autism advocacy, and why inclusive classrooms aren't just better for disabled students, they're better for everyone. We also dive into disability justice, the ethics of genetic research, and what it means to learn out loud in public. Before we meet our guests, I want to tell you about our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by IXL. IXL is an all-in-one platform for K-12 that helps boost student achievement, empowers teachers, and tracks progress in one place. As students practice, IXL adapts to their individual needs so that every learner gets just right support and challenge. And each student gets a personalized learning plan to close gaps. Check it out at ixl.com/inclusive. Again, that's ixl.com/inclusive. All right, after a quick break, it's time to Think Inclusive with Meghan Ashburn and Jules Edwards. Catch you on the other side. Meghan Ashburn and Jules Edwards, welcome to the Think Inclusive podcast.
Thank you for having us.
All right. This is exciting. So I have actually listened to about a half of I Will Die on This Hill. And I am just blown away by the authentic just your truth that comes out in the book. And I love your stories. And one of the things that I think I just like to jump in here is that the way that both of you met and collaborate on this book is really interesting to me. So I'm wondering if we could just start there. Because it seemed like you had a little bit of an adversarial type of relationship. So who would like to start?
Meghan wants to start.
Are you going to make me start this time?
I am. Yeah, she usually makes me go first, but for this question, I feel like it's only fair.
Okay.
Well, I guess we met online and, we didn't know each other. And we were both in very different journeys. And we've had very different experiences when it came to learning about autism, being autistic and all of that. So we met it was a little bit adversarial, just a little bit, but not too much so. It was just that Jules would see some of my posts and she would, comment on things that were problematic. And I didn't really understand why they were problematic because I didn't have the knowledge that Jules had yet. Yeah, I guess you could say it started a little bit adversarial, but over time, I think that Jules kind of did a little bit of reaching out to me and commenting on things that she did like after a little bit of time. And then I think there was a time when I messaged her at some point and asked her if, if she wouldn't mind answering questions that I had. And that, I think that kind of turned it around a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jules. My memory is always a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah. So Megan and I, our introduction to the world of autism generally and disability was around the same period of time. So we were both learning new stuff, but from different sources. And she had a blog, and I didn't have a blog at first. I think Megan is one of the few people who told me, start your own blog. And so I did, ultimately. But it was kind of like messy at first because she would post some stuff and there was some problematic stuff, but overall she had really good content. She had good ideas. She loves her kids, would do anything to protect them. But certain things just hadn't occurred to her because the mainstream information that we have about autism, especially, 10 years ago, was very ableist, very like biomed driven, just problematic. So I would comment, and one of the comments that I made to her was like, someday your kids are going to read this. And that just got under her skin. And she did bite her tongue in her response, but it was kind of like, what do you mean? Because up until then, she had been told from medical professionals, doctors, et cetera, like, your kids are never going to X, Y, Z, and like this really fatalistic attitude. So
I had never mentioned the future, and that there was any like zero hope for the future. It was all just, your kids are broken almost. I mean, that's kind of the message that the professionals were giving me. And I was like, who is she to say my kids are going to be able to do something that nobody ever told me that they would be able to read one day? And it just, it did rub me the wrong way. But it also was at the time when I was starting to learn from autistic people, and I started reading books from autistic people, and that learning experience, I think, it turned everything around for how I was acting and how I was maneuvering those spaces.
Yeah. Megan, you were a teacher, right? Elementary, is that right?
Elementary, that's right.
And so I'm wondering, and I don't know, Jules, about your background, but I'm a former special education teacher, and in teacher training, right, what you learn about autism, what you learn about disability is all from like professionals, doctors, and you come at it with this way of, I'm going to step in and fix, and so I'm wondering how much, did that really inform how you approached, raising your kids, at least at the beginning?
Honestly, I feel like I'm a little bit lucky since I had a general elementary education. So I think there was like a paragraph about autism in our textbook. So I didn't even have that. Yeah, luckily I didn't even have that. And I mean, my background, I went to an inclusive preschool. I think back in the day it was called like reverse inclusion. My mom had a daycare. And so, I mean, I've always been, in that kind of mindset about inclusion. And honestly, like, this was kind of the first time that I've been introduced to that real ableist, deficit-driven narrative, is when I had my kids, and a lot of it just didn't sit right with me. So I think that was just my instincts were there, and then I was just getting all of this negative stuff thrown at me. And so, like, when I did start learning about ableism and from the disabled community, it just kind of clicked, and it was like, that sounds more better. Definitely.
Yeah. And Jules, your journey too, right? They learned that you were autistic later in life, right? How did that inform, you know, the diagnosis of your kids?
Yeah. So my two oldest kids were diagnosed before me. And so we kind of suspected for a year or two. And I was trying to learn more about it. And finally, when we got my oldest two kids in, they had like full team neuropsych evaluations. Um, and the oldest was diagnosed like right away. And my second, they tried to diagnose him with oppositional defiant disorder because, he's an Afro-Indigenous kid, doesn't fit the train schedule stereotype as much. Um, so they were like, you just don't want to listen. And I was like, yeah, I don't think that's it. So during his evaluation, like review meeting, you meet with the team afterwards to review the results from their evaluation. They're like, well, we don't think it's autism. And I'm like, well, what about this and this and this and this? And they're like, oh yeah, maybe we should add this evaluation on. So, okay, he'll come in again next week. I'm like, okay. And then they said he's autistic. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to know everything about this because I knew that I knew nothing. I think the reason that my kids were so delayed in their diagnosis because they were, I think, 11 and 9 or something like that. It was because of the misinformation that we got in the early 2000s. So when my oldest was 2 years old, he was a flapper. I mean, his family sometimes called him Birdman just because he was flapping all the time. And I searched on the internet, why is my toddler flapping? And autism stuff came up. But the way that Autism Speaks and other organizations that hold that dominant narrative, the way they talk about autism, I couldn't relate that to my kid. The way that they were speaking about autistic people was gross. And I'm like, nope, my kid is a gift. My child is a gift. And so I knew that everything that I knew about autism was wrong. So I read every single book that was available in my county library system. Like I was requesting them from all the other branches from my city. I was listening to audiobooks and I watched VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
the more that I learned, I was like, wait, that's me? So that was an interesting journey to kind of discover that about myself. At the same time, I was learning how to be the parent my kids needed, because I know that for the first decade of my parenting journey, I was struggling. I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing my best, but it wasn't good enough. So
Yeah.
looking was very helpful.
And so I started a blog and podcast in 2012. So I totally relate to putting yourself out there and being surprised that people actually listened, number one, right? But then also like writing something and being immediately regretful that you wrote it, because it's like you get so much flack, right? And so I give both of you a lot of credit for putting yourself out there and then, just kind of building your understanding in public, which I definitely can relate to. How, I guess, like, what made you want to do that in the first place? Because I mean, for me, it was about using this tool of blogging and social media and trying to connect with as many people about inclusive education as possible. Because like I was like so trying to figure it out and trying to get so many different people's perspectives. Is that something similar? Like why even step out into this kind of more public figure type of advocacy?
I think part of it was that. And then the other part was especially after I started learning things like about AAC devices. Uh, once I found the autistic community, I didn't want other parents to wait, like have to wait as long. Like it took me like way too long to learn these things, and it took me way too long to find the autistic community. And so I wanted it to come faster for other parents. I think that was like the biggest thing for me. I think in the beginning, yeah, some of it was venting and some of it was just seeing like reaching out to see who could help inform me about what I was going through. But like as a parent, because I just didn't understand what was happening. But mainly, I think that it's been like, I want other parents to see this quicker. I want to reach them before they go down that other rabbit hole of, what's it called?
Like biomedical.
Yeah, before they go out, I want to reach them before they hit that rabbit hole, because that's a deep one to go down.
For sure. Yes.
So
sure.
yeah, I think that's for me, that's why I kind of learn out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Jules?
I didn't want to do this publicly. I still kind of am uncomfortable with it. When I started like the autistic typing page, blog, etc., I was anonymous. And I want to say it was like for 2 years. I think the first 2 years I was anonymous because I didn't want the spotlight on me or my kids. Still protect my children's privacy very, very strongly. They have, fake names. They never post pictures, etc. But Meghan's met them. So they're real. Yeah. But I didn't want to do it publicly, but I saw a need because so much autism advocacy, autism information is very white centric. And the Native community has very, very little representation. And one thing I don't want to be is like a token in this disability advocacy field. And it feels like that happens quite a bit. But having that cultural lens, like it changes the way that I think about autism. It changes the way I experience autism. So I think that that's something that needs to be shared because it is very lonely to not know other Native autistic people. You go to an autism support group and people have a completely different lens. And it's like, I don't fit in here. I don't fit in. I've met a few other Native autistic people, and I love that for me, including within my own family. Over time, it's like, oh, okay, that this apple comes from an apple tree, so that's cool. But really, it was like fulfilling a need, and so my name only became associated with my like social media and stuff, because of the book. But here I am, and I much prefer doing stuff like behind the scenes, like going to the Capitol and testifying, or like consulting and like meaningful change to things. So I have worked with like medical providers to provide culturally responsive care for disabled kids. I've done some consulting with schools. I've done all kinds of stuff, and I think it's really fun, and it really fits for my brand of ADHD that gets tired at a regular job after 2 years. Like, okay, I've mastered this. What's next? So
Right. Yeah. I really liked your description in the book about like constantly having to do things. And if you stop, like you basically like, you're like, I'm done. So I think that is, that's a really, a very clear description of kind of who you are, and so I picked up on that. I thought that was great. Yeah. Well, it's interesting about the book, right? So when did the book come out?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, I think. Yeah.
January.
Because I think I had been following at least Meghan on social media for a while, and I don't remember how long that's been, but it feels like the book just came out. Like, honestly, I don't know about y'all, but for me, it's like, and so how has the book been received? Like what kind of feedback have you gotten? I know I'm like way off script on the questions, but I'm just,
That's okay.
Yeah.
We're good with that.
Okay.
I feel like it's been received well. I don't even know how to answer that, honestly. I mean, I feel like it has, people have reached out to say how much it has impacted them. So I feel like that's awesome. It has sparked some conversation. I feel like it's a very niche book, and it's not a easy read. I mean, I feel like it's written easily to read, but like it's not a light read, so it's not like, oh
Yeah.
I loved your book, I felt so great afterwards. I don't feel like anybody has said that or anything, but I feel like people have said that it's important, so I feel like it was a contribution. And I also don't think like it ages that much, because we're really talking about really broad topics and things that are just repeatedly happening over and over. Like the things in the book, the topics in the book just keep happening over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
So I like that part of it.
You said it sparked some conversation, so I'm wondering if you have an example.
No.
I mean, I can. Okay, so that I didn't mean to put you on the spot. But something that jumped out at me, and I'm not going to get this right, so I apologize.
Okay, good.
And it might be something that it was in one of Jules' chapters, but about like you said before, that the information coming out about autism really is like white centric and like has this colonial colonizer type of I'm not gonna say it right. How would you say that? Like what how would you say it? Because I'm not gonna say it right. Am I saying that right? Because I don't have the print version in front of me, so I should have bookmarked it.
No, I think you're talking about like the colonial capitalist lens.
Yes, there you go. That's it. Oh my gosh, yes. Unpack that for us, because I think I was walking my dog and I listened to that, and I was just like, oh, yes, the colonial capital. Yes, because I think that, and I think it goes along with like this, like the biomedical way of treating, quote unquote, treating autism. Right? You have this overwhelming. All of these curriculums, all of these, medicines, all of these ways and procedures. I mean, and people make a lot of money treating autism. And let me just say one thing before I let you go on this, because I think that I come from this, like, when I first started in the field of special education. Before I even became a teacher, I was a behavior therapist. So right out of college, I was a psychology major, right? And I was looking for a job, and the first job I could find was as a behavior therapist. So they taught me discrete trial, ABA, all this stuff, right? And I worked with young children on the spectrum, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So I did like in-home therapy and in-school therapy. And I was so blown away, like just hanging out with families and all of the money they were spending on all of this like specialized food, curriculum, treatments, all this stuff. And it's like that, it's not like that hasn't stopped, right? I mean, like however many 20 ish years later, people continue to spend a lot of money on treatment. And so when you said that kind of that in that capitalist lens, I'm like, oh my gosh, that so rings true to me. So help us with our audience just and unpack some of that for us.
There's a lot to unpack there.
After the break, we get into the money behind autism treatment, the ethics of genetic research, and why inclusive classrooms aren't just better for disabled students, they're better for everyone. Plus, coming up at the end of the episode, Jules and Meghan answer a mystery question that you will not want to miss. This show is produced by the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education, MCIE. MCIE partners with educators and school systems to promote authentic inclusion, foster change, and support the implementation of inclusive practices, whether it's district-wide transformation, customized learner planning, or professional learning and coaching. MCIE walks alongside educators every step of the way. And here's the best part. Our work begins with a conversation. So if you're ready to create schools where every learner belongs, visit mcie.org to get in touch and start that conversation today.
I mean, right now in the world, not to be too political, because I don't want to, and I don't want anybody turning off my interview before the end. But right now, this men who have named themselves after a meme, and it's Doge. I don't know how other people pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it. So they're looking for fraud, right? They're looking for cost savings. They're looking for whatever. And I'm thinking in my head, like, please discover the ABA effectiveness and cost effectiveness, like studies. Like TRICARE did a study, I think it was like, 2018? I think it was 2018. Might be wrong, but around 2018. TRICARE, which is like the military insurance provider, discovered that it's not cost effective. They're spending like millions, billions of dollars on ABA. And it's because we've been sold this idea by private equity firms that if we put our kids into essentially a full-time job to comply, that they're going to be more normal. Because
40 hours a week. Yep.
Because we see human value as what they can contribute to capitalism, right? So we want to train these young humans to be workers. We want them to produce something. And so we have sub-minimum wage. We have people in these, what is it called? 14C certification. I think that's what it's called, is 14 something, where employers can pay disabled people less than minimum wage to work. But it's not often self-determined. It's not often in consultation with the disabled person. So there's very little choice. And it's profitable for the employers. But then those people who are working can't pay rent. They rely on food stamps in order to eat, or food support. I'm old, so I grew up calling it food stamps. But so these people who are often coerced or forced into these sub-minimum wage jobs can't even reap the benefits of working, but they're working. So it's a lot of like systems that are pulling money out of autism in whatever way they can. So most of the money that is spent on quote unquote autism doesn't benefit autistic people. It benefits people who are like around autistic people. So it could be providers usually, it could be goods and services or whatever. But we know that autistic people are generally living in poverty. Not generally, but like very often. There was a study in the UK where 10% of all unhoused people meet the diagnostic criteria for autism, but don't have a diagnosis. Like, if that's happening in the UK, what is it here in the US? We don't even have research on that because so little regard goes to our quality of life. It goes to fit in, because the United States loves assimilation. Like, oh, you're weird. We don't want you to be you. We want you to change to fit into our narrow scope of what it means to be a person. It's really dehumanizing. But it's all about like following the money. Where is it coming? Where is it going? Because autistic people aren't necessarily benefiting from it. I don't know. And I don't like it. And I don't like the idea of having to change a disabled person because it makes somebody else uncomfortable. Like, okay, well, be uncomfortable then. That sounds like a you problem because I'm good over here. If I'm managing my sensory stuff, if I'm, eating foods that don't make me sick. And that's that's something that gets under my skin. You mentioned like special diets and stuff like that to so-called help autistic people. Autism is a social communication and sensory disability. That's it. That's all. That's the whole of it. It's not a behavioral disorder. It's not a behavioral disability. It's not that. But the problem is that it's diagnosed based on observable behaviors rather than a person's experiences. And that's kind of garbage. So there's been work on tools to improve the diagnostic experience. So we're actually like catching people who are traditionally missed.
Like girls and women, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's,
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot right there, but I think, even like, when we first learn about autism, it's like, the overrepresentation or underrepresentation of girls in the diagnosis criteria, period. And then as long as we're making people mad, is there anything that you want to mention about like the focus of the current administration on this false idea of the autism epidemic? Because like one thing that I mean, you don't know this about me, but I teach teachers. This is like a side gig. I teach an autism course for upcoming special educators who are going through alternate certification in Georgia. And so I might even actually have them listen to this conversation. But one of the things that we, is always a little bit scary to bring up is this idea of the rising rates of autism, and that they have nothing to do with a vaccine schedule. There's no connection between vaccines and autism. And there's usually one or two students that are like, really upset by that because they have really strong beliefs about that connection. So I don't know if that's anything you want to talk about. You don't have to, but.
So listen, Tim, this is why I have a reputation.
It's just like, okay.
She's just sitting back, but yes, vaccines do not cause autism. That's a thing. I know that there are people who believe that it is. And you know what? I understand people's curiosity because we don't have a definitive answer. And a little bit further, I think it is possible that autistic parents of autistic kids who generally, we like answers. We like real, true facts, right? So our kid gets diagnosed, and most of the time as parents, we're not diagnosed. We don't even have a clue. We think something is different about our kids, and we don't see ourselves in it necessarily. But I think that a lot of those people who are searching for answers are autistic themselves. Those parents who are like, well, something changed in my child after the vaccines, etc. Well, they probably were a little cranky that day, right? And you're trying to pinpoint what happened and when. Well, kids are born autistic. That's the thing. And we know that autism is like an epigenetic thing. So we know that it's genetic. It isn't always heritable, but it is part of a person's DNA. So it could be, what do they call it? A de novo mutation. So genes change like one-offs, or it could be heritable, meaning you inherited a gene mutation from your parents, whatever. Everybody has gene mutations. I'm not saying we're mutants. Everybody has a bunch of them. Just for those who aren't familiar with those terms. And I know that RFK is, how do I say this nicely? I can't, but he is nonsensical. He is irrational. He doesn't care about facts. And let's just be real. We know that even if they find a specific single cause of autism. If it's an environmental thing, they're going to decide it's not worth spending money on to prevent. Because let's look at what happens with lead in our water. We know it's a neurotoxin. We know it causes harm, especially to children. And when we find it in our pipes, we just kind of shrug. Well, okay. And it's like, oh, deal with it on your own. We look at places like Flint, Michigan. I just got a letter in the mail within the last year telling me that my house had lead pipes. And we didn't live in this house long ago. Like when my kids were diagnosed, we didn't live in this house. We bought a house afterwards. So I'm not saying my kids have lead poisoning, but I'm saying there are a whole bunch of kids all over this country with lead poisoning, and we just don't care. So I know that people who probably cried when they had vaccines as kids and felt very victimized by those vaccines have carried that trauma forth to today. And they're like, well, don't put my kid through that. And they just want to come out with some villain. Also, what is it to think like, well, I would rather my child die of a preventable illness than have an autistic kid? It's like, but these people who think that way, and it's a real thing. There was a child who died in Texas this year, like a month or two ago. And their parents are like, well, the child is with God now. And their whole thing was like, they didn't want their kid to be autistic. Well, if their kid ended up being autistic and they didn't want their kid, I would take that kid in. Like, that's the person I am. I love babies. But it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I am concerned about the implications for genetic research because there's like that Spark study. They're trying to sequence DNA and find the specific DNA code that is related to autism. And there has not been any kind of ethics statement about we aren't going to use this research to develop a prenatal test. Because what's going to happen, they're going to develop a prenatal test and the U.S. is going to start aborting millions of babies a year for fetuses, pregnancies, whatever. And based on incomplete information, because they aren't going to sequence the mom's DNA and the dad's DNA and be like, oh, this is where it came from. You're autistic too. Congratulations. It's just like this weird target on children because we focus so much on kids and we have zero information or support for adults. Because
that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that study or that practice yet. So yeah, I'll have to look more into that.
It's scary.
They got it shut down, didn't they? Or at least paused?
I don't think so. I think Spark is still going, but a lot of the projects that I've been working on have been cut off. AWN lost a $30,000 grant. AWN is the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. We lost a $30,000 grant. And that had a significant impact on the organization. A research project that I was working on with National Institute of Health, NIH, that shut down because we were looking for appropriate diagnoses and inclusive, like gender inclusive stuff within the world of autism. And they're like, oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can't have any of that. Yep.
Now we're just going to end up decades back. Like we've lost decades worth of research already. It will take so much money and so much time and so much effort to recover what we have already lost because you can't end a study and then just pick it up again a couple of years later. You have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Meghan,
do you have anything to add? Sorry, Jules, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Good.
I mean, there's just so many directions that you can go in with this topic. I mean, it's endless. And the one thing I just keeps going in my head is like, we've been here before, right? Like whatever that thing that he was talking about, the RFK guy was talking about with we're going to find this and we're going to do this, like sounds eerily like 100 years ago. Like, so we've done this before. We know where this goes. So, I mean, it's dangerous. honestly. Like that type of thinking. And I just feel like we're in a fun house. It's just not very fun at all. What is
Not fun. Not a
ridiculous.
fun house. No, no. Well, I do agree. We could stay on this topic for the rest of our time. But I did. So thank you for sharing your thoughts about that. And like, it's such a frustrating time to see people's work and research be completely just essentially thrown in the trash because of all of these cuts. So my heart, our audience, our heart goes out to you and anyone who's been working on things that were trying to improve people's lives. So really, it's just it's a huge shame. So I do want to talk a little bit about your perspective with disability justice, because that is also something that you talk about in the book, and I like that you frame it as disability justice within the context of autism advocacy.
So disability justice was created by disabled queer women of color, I believe in San Francisco, who wanted to address the cliffhangers of the ADA, so the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a good thing that we have that is currently under threat, and also an example of how colonial capitalist lenses like impact disability and inclusion, et cetera, because the ADA relies very, very heavily on lawsuits. Like in order to enforce your ADA rights, you have to file a lawsuit. Well, who can afford to do that? Not most disabled people. It's good, but also not enough. So disability justice has 10 principles that were meant to ensure like better inclusion, more equity in disability inclusion, and just living our lives. So it's meant to center people who are most impacted by systems. So people who are non-speaking, people of color, people with multiple disabilities, et cetera. It's meant to see the intersectionality of our lives, because we don't live single issue lives. And that's Audre Lorde said that, I don't remember what year, but a long time ago. Our lives are so much more complex than a disability. Like our cultures, our economic status, our families, our environments, like shape our experiences so much. And so we also have to care about Black Lives Matter, because it is disabled Black people and Native American people who are being killed at the highest rates by law enforcement officers. And just a few days ago, a young man was killed by police, an autistic Latino young man. Oh, no, he wasn't killed. I'm sorry. He was shot 9 times, and he is currently fighting for his life. And it is too often that happened. Like, it's happened in my community. Kobe Heisler, we mentioned him in the book. I'm acquainted with his mom, and she does a lot of work with the Black Lives Matter movement. So disability justice includes so much more of our lives. It's more comprehensive, and it's really a framework just to guide like how we advocate for our community and how we support our.
I think that anybody who's listening to the podcast should go check out the 10 principles of disability justice from their website and learn more about that.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put that in the show notes of this episode. When you were mentioning, Jules, about the enforcement of ADA, it reminds me a lot of the enforcement of IDEA, because you have this law, right, that's not funded. I think, it's funded at 12, 13% of the promised 40%. So schools aren't even implementing it with the full, financial support of the federal government. And then in order for a family to have any sort of recourse if they feel like their child's rights have been violated. It's really the goodwill of the school to fix it. And if they don't, they have to sue. So it's very much like, I don't think I ever put it quite together like that until you mentioned about ADA. And it's just, it puts families in a really tough spot.
It does. Special education, IDEA, it's all, part of the same system of like, the more privilege you have, the more privileges you can access, I guess, because I genuinely don't think that what we call our disability rights are actually rights. I think they are privileges, because if you can't afford to enforce your right, it is a privilege for those who can afford to enforce their right. And we've been kicked out of public schools, not officially. We were pushed out of our local public school district. And because I couldn't afford to enforce my kids' rights. So we found alternatives. And it shouldn't have to be that way, but it unfortunately is.
Yeah, and then that's what families have to do, unfortunately. Well, a lot
the
of
processes put in place are just not accessible. They're not, to only to a select few. It's not due process and all of that stuff. I mean, who can do that except for somebody that has the time and the money to spend. And most parents that I know don't have either of those two things.
Right. We've talked a little bit about inclusion, in the context of just the broader, disability rights community and justice. I'm wondering, a lot of people that listen to this podcast in particular are deeply invested and committed to inclusive classrooms and schools and districts. I didn't hear anything in the book specifically about that, but I didn't, in full transparency, I didn't listen to all of it. So is that something that you cover, or do you have any thoughts about, creating inclusive classrooms and schools and districts?
Yeah, we cover that in the book. It's towards the end, I think. But I mean, I have very strong feelings about inclusion. I think I talk about that on my blog all the time. I feel very strongly that when done correctly, and when I have to put the caveat up there of like, when it's planned, when it's thoughtful implementation, that there really is no debate about whether inclusion or inclusive environments are better than segregated environments. There is no debate on that. I mean, the research is clear, decades and decades and decades of research. There's not a debate on that. It's the only time I see when it's not working is when it's not being thoughtfully planned out, when it's approached with an ableist view, or when it's approached with like, I have to do this. You know what I mean? I mean, I do see that not working in those situations. But segregated classrooms are more dangerous for our kids. Much more dangerous. And the notion that they are more supportive with less kids and more teachers, and they're calmer, that it's just untrue. It's not based in reality for what a segregated setting looks like. It's much more chaotic. It is it's kids going in and out, and people going, teachers going in and out. And they are separated from the community. And so they are inherently much more dangerous for our kids than an integrated setting. I do soapbox on this all the time, but it's true, because I've seen so many different angles of this, even with my own kids, with my friends' kids. I've seen it, all over the country. I've seen it in my state in the work that I'm doing now, with families. I see the trauma that comes out of segregated settings. And honestly, I'm at the point now that if your kindergarten isn't fully inclusive, you shouldn't have a kindergarten. Like there's something wrong with your kindergarten if you can't include every 5-year-old. There's something terribly wrong with your kindergarten setup.
Absolutely. And I mean, and there's more to that. I mean, it's such a complex topic. But I also want to be sure to emphasize that inclusion benefits everyone. It's not like a charity case for disabled kids. It's good for typically developing students. It's good for abled students to have an inclusive environment. It's funny because we look around today and we look at this, the autism rates are 1 in whatever, and we never had this autism when I was young. Yes, you did, but you didn't know because the kids were secluded or put in other schools or whatever
Asylum.
else. Asylum, for the older folks. But I was autistic in the 80s, but nobody knew. They just thought I was weird and whatever else. Bully. Yeah. So, I mean, when kids learn to be inclusive, when they learn how to interact with disabled people, which is a wild thing, is that a lot of able people have no idea how to talk to a disabled person. There's even books about it. There's books about how to talk to a disabled person. They're just people. We're just people.
Right.
But imagine if everybody had attended a school that was inclusive, where disabled kids and able kids were learning together and learning from each other. Imagine how much better of a people we would be, just generally and culturally. Because
I'll piggyback on that.
Please.
I don't want to cut you off. I'm sorry, Jules, but imagine how much better our teachers would be now if they had grown up in an inclusive setting. How much better would they be at inclusion right now if they had that experience growing up? My kids' classmates right now are learning about AAC. They have access to it in the classroom. They have it on. Some of them have it on their own tablets now. That's just one example of how much richer their education is than people that don't have my son in their class. They're learning things that other people are not learning. And, that is a rich thing for kids, to have that, to have those extra experiences about, things that they might not be exposed to otherwise. So yeah, it benefits everyone. It definitely does.
Yeah, I feel like I've been pretty, I don't know if blessed is the right word, but accidentally prepped for inclusive thinking. I actually did not go to public school. I went to private school. And so I literally, the first time I heard about special education was in the one of my last classes in college. And it was called The Psychology of the Exceptional Child. And I was I thought I was going to learn about gifted kids. And that's when there's this whole system called special education and public schools. I had no clue. And so looking back, I really feel like there were learners in my classes that had learning disabilities, other, maybe more obvious ones. But it just wasn't a thing. We just all were in the same class and we were learning. And so I don't know if it was necessarily intentional by the school, but it was never a thing. And so, yeah, I feel like I was already prepped as I was a teacher educator to interrogate some of those, well, why are we separating those kids? And why do we need this and that? But, we're all on a journey. I definitely was one of the people that was oh yeah, autistic kids need their own special place, and it wasn't until I really started seeing and including my kids into general education that I was like, oh, yeah, of course it works. You just have to plan for it. Like Meghan, like you said, you have to plan for it. You don't expect to, dump kids in a classroom with and without disabilities and just expect it to go okay,
Yeah. And two, it's important to remember, like, the gifted and talented programs, or exceptional learners or advanced learners, whatever label we slap on that's just a different end of the bell curve as intellectual disability. It's the same bell curve, and we're still 2 standard deviations away from the mean on either end. So students with intellectual disabilities and students who are identified as gifted have the same intensity of learning support needs and the same need for adaptation. And schools get it so wrong, even with gifted students, about we just pile on extra work. But it's like, that's not what having like a high IQ or whatever means. It's not like, oh, I have more capacity to do work. That's not what that means. It means that we need to be creative and proactive and take different approaches to learning, et cetera. And so I have kids who, I hate the term twice exceptional, but there's a use for it in identifying that a kid has very unique support needs. So when you have an autistic kid, an ADHD kid, and they're also, my kids' district calls it advanced learner, you need to make sure you're not just overwhelming them and pushing them into burnout by giving them a whole lot of work. You need to give them immersive experiences. A lot of advanced learners still need multisensory learning. Like, that benefits everyone because everybody has a different learning style. But being in an inclusive environment, people can build on other strengths and learn to work collaboratively. And that benefits everyone.
Well, what we're hearing in the end, is there anything you want to leave our audience of educators with?
I'm going to say, based on my experience, I would love educators to be very proactive about addressing bullying and keep your eyes out for it. Keep your ears out for it. Don't have predeterminations based on your own experiences with a student, whether or not they may or may not be bullied, or whether or not they may be the person doing the bullying. Because I think sometimes those preconceived notions about a student can influence whether or not they're being protected. And I know that pretty much every autistic person that I know was bullied in school. Maybe not every single one, but most of them, including my own kids. And it makes school so much harder.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I have
Meghan.
something. If I'm going to leave with something, I think that I would like to speak directly to gen ed educators and empower them to take more of an active role in their schools for inclusion. Because I feel like a lot of times gen ed teachers feel like they don't really have anything to do with that and those decisions. And really they have so much control over increasing inclusion for kids, because all they have to do is ask for them to come, invite those kids to your class, let them know, hey, they're welcome. Yes, it might not work all the time, right? It might not always be successful, but the more they do it, the more successful they'll be. And for those gen ed educators, I'd like for them to be more proactive and increasing inclusion for kids.
All right, teachers, you heard it. Meghan is imploring you to get those kids, bring to your room.
That's right.
We've covered a lot, from the economics of autism treatment to the power of inclusive classrooms. Now, to wrap things up, it's time for our favorite segment, the mystery question, written by my daughter. Let's see what Jules and Meghan have to say. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you both for being here. Before I let you go, it's mystery question time. These questions were written by my 12-year-old, and I'm going to randomly pick one. Hopefully it's a good one, and then we'll all answer it. Okay, here we go. What is your favorite word and why? Put that on the screen. What is your favorite word and why? PG, maybe PG-13. Okay?
Okay. I'm just going to go.
Yes.
I really love the word putrid.
Okay.
I don't know why this would just come up as like one of my favorite words, but it's such a distinct word and it can be applied so many different ways. But it's just like it's a good descriptor when something is just not right. And it's not like offensive. It's not, it's not piping down. But it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, that's putrid. And I actually, I grew up, I babysat a lot. And I babysat for one of my cousins. And I taught them that word. And they were little. And one of my cousins would sing a song about her brother. And it was about how putrid he was. And
oh my goodness, putrid. Okay, that is a good word. That is a great word.
it's a
Okay.
I want to go last, Tim. I still need time.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna need a second. There's so many words.
You
Right?
asked such a great question. I want to make sure I'm accurate.
It is a great question. She asks good questions. Maybe future podcaster. Gosh. I don't know which way to go here. Because I feel like I could go. So I'm just gonna try to not think about it too much. Okay, I'm gonna go this way. And it's not like a super complicated word, but we're gonna go with it. But I really like the word mindful. So mindful. I've talked a lot about. I like talk a lot about meditation on this podcast now. So I apologize for everyone who's just like, oh, here he goes, he's talking about meditation again. But like, it's such an important word for me now about being mindful. I used to think that mindful or mindfulness was like this afterthought, right? That this was it's just like, oh, it's yeah, you should be more present, you should be, all this stuff. But like the being mindful or being present actually like takes the pressure off of you constantly thinking about things like in your subconscious, and it actually brings your stress level down so much. Like once you start to actually have this practice of mindfulness. And so it has become so important to me. It's like once you like learn something, you want to tell everyone about it. Like that's exactly how I feel about this. So again, apologies for everyone who's like, this is like the 100th time you told me, Tim, but yes, mindful or mindfulness, that's a really important, and I love that word. So there you go. Megan, did I give you enough time?
No.
it's on Meghan.
Gosh.
Don't think about it too much. It is a tough question, but
pressure is like, it's just mounting. I'm just going to say my favorite word is sunset.
Okay. And why?
Because that's my favorite thing to look at. So
There you go.
that's what popped into my head. I know it's not very deep or anything, but I don't know. It's like my favorite thing. So my favorite word is going to be sunset.
I like that. We should all like watch more sunsets, right?
I think so. I definitely think so.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Meghan Ashburn and Jules Edwards, thank you so much for being on the Think Inclusive podcast. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks for having us.
You know.
That was Meghan Ashburn and Jules Edwards. Here is what I'm taking with me. Inclusion isn't just about access. It is about intention. You can't just place students with and without disabilities in the same room and expect it to work. As Meghan said, you have to plan for it. And when you do, everyone benefits. That's at the heart of what we're trying to do here, build schools where every learner belongs. If you're a general education teacher, here is one practical step. Take the initiative and invite learners with disabilities into your classroom. Let them know that they are welcome. Share this episode with a colleague who's building inclusive schools. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow Think Inclusive wherever you get your podcasts. Shout out to our listeners in Toronto, Ontario. I may be rooting against your team in the World Series. Sorry, I'm a lifelong Dodger fan here, but I'll always be rooting for you and all of you who are doing the work of inclusion every single day. So thank you. If you have something to share, you can always email me at tviegas@mcie.org. Time for the credits. Think Inclusive is brought to you by me, Tim Villegas. I write, edit, mix, master. I basically wear all the podcast hats and the baseball caps. This show is a proud production of the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education, scheduling and extra production help from Jill Wagoner. Our original music is by Miles Kredich with extra vibes from Melody. Big thanks to our sponsor, IXL. Visit ixl.com/inclusive. Fun fact for today, autistic people are more likely to be super tasters. That is from a 2014 journal article, Research in Autism Spectrum Disorders, Taste Identification in Children with Autism Spectrum Disorders. What does super tasters mean? Well, that means they may experience taste more intensely than non-autistic people. This heightened sensitivity can make certain foods taste overwhelmingly bitter, spicy, or sour, which may explain some common food aversions. Are you, or someone you know, a super taster? I'd love to know about it. Email me at tviegas@mcie.org. I read every single message. If you've made it this far into the episode, you are very likely a super fan, and you're officially part of the Think Inclusive inclusion crew. Want to help us keep moving the needle for inclusion? Head to mcie.org, click the donate button, and give $5, $10, $20. It helps us keep partnering with schools and districts to move inclusive practices forward and support educators doing the work. Find us on the socials almost everywhere at Think Inclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and remember, inclusion always works. From MCIE.
Podcast rule. Welcome in.